could get a room here.
Let's call the meeting to order. Everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I know we've had some changes to the agenda.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a revised agenda which removes item E from the agenda tonight. That item is tentatively rescheduled for the June 9th meeting. And then item F, which was originally on the consent agenda, has been moved down to item D under general business.
Any motions?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Bryce.
Second.
Second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda's adopted. We don't have any presentations this evening, so we'll open up for public comment. Anyone here to speak under public comment at all? Nope. All right, close public comment. Go to consent. Anyone have any items on consent they want to question or remove or?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Josh.
Second.
Boy, that was close.
Second.
I'm going with second by Amanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda passes. You're good to go.
Thanks, Jerry.
No public hearings tonight, so we'll get into general business.
First item under general business is a discussion related to Main Street lofts. This is the project that the council originally had discussions with MWF about related to support for purposes of application for tax credits to the state of Minnesota. They are back again with a slightly retooled project. Renee will be giving a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Tom, and Mayor and Council. You're familiar with the project that was considered in 2021. A little review of the property and project leading up to this point. KL Group owns this property. It's 10 gross acres, a little over 4 net acres, subtracting out wetlands at the southeast corner of County Highway 2 and 91. Joseph Development has an agreement to purchase the property, or an option to purchase the property, subject to approvals of a proposed 61-unit multifamily housing development that has been named Main Street Lofts. In 2021, there was a combination of 15 one-bedroom, 24 two-bedroom, and 22 three-bedroom apartments proposed at that location. The building would be 4 stories over a partially underground parking area, and also includes at-grade parking. This is an affordable housing project. Again, the developer has been working on the project since 2021. These are the renderings that were provided to you last year. Really nothing about the renderings have changed, with the exception of the vinyl siding that had been proposed would be changed to some type of LP or hard siding material. The developer indicated in 2021 that the project would be dependent upon their receiving award of low-income housing tax credits. In the state of Minnesota, they are federal funds. In the state of Minnesota, they are channeled through Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, who awards the funds to developers and investors in exchange for a reduction in property tax liability. It's kind of a dollar-for-dollar exchange for capital to develop affordable housing rental units. Support from the city is an important part of the low-income housing tax credit application process. And in 2021, not only the concept plan for the development itself was reviewed by the Planning Commission and the City Council, but also a preliminary application for tax increment financing. And ultimately, the City Council in 2021 did adopt a resolution 21-23 supporting the project and the use of TIF. The 21 application was unsuccessful. The applicant has evaluated the project, tried to figure out ways that they could make their application more competitive. They still feel it's a competitive project and are intending to take another swing at it in 2022, pending support from the city. The application would be submitted. They are due in July, and then the awards are made in December. Developers seeking approval of a resolution and a letter of support that could be included with their application, a resolution of support for the TIF. Joseph Development is the applicant and the developer on this project. They do work closely with MWF Properties. Matt Yetzer is here representing and providing consulting services to Joseph Development on this project. They are a southern Minnesota multifamily housing developer. They're one of the leading 9% tax credit developers in Minnesota over the past 20 years, and their projects are managed in-house by a property management company, Valair Property Management. I'm just going to do a quick review of some of the planning related items, much more condensed than last year, but the site plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission in 2021 was Site Plan H. The Planning Commission recommended support for the project with a number of conditions, 29 conditions that were noted to be considered in future submittals. The property is zoned R4, which is our high-density multifamily district. Apartment buildings are a permitted use in that zoning district. Developer has indicated they would be requesting PUD zoning for the development, which is a special zoning district that allows some flexibility from the typical standards in the city's zoning ordinance. And specifically, the flexibilities that they were seeking were setbacks to the county roads, a variance regarding increased building height, and parking standards at the time. The city has since revised its parking standards, so I don't know that that one, I believe that they will be able to meet the city's parking standards going forward. Go ahead.
Sorry, can you jump into questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, would it be easier to do a variance on like the setbacks and the building height versus doing a PUD?
Possibly. If we, the building height is typically, variances of building height are handled by conditional use permit under our code. And the code specifically states that you can go higher than the height requirement in the zoning district if you increase your setbacks. In this situation, because of the wetland and the constraints, really due to the wetland, we can't justify the increased height. We can review that with Andrea, and I would rather not do a PUD. I'd rather do straight zoning with some variances, but I would have to review that with Andrea.
Okay.
Usually there is some give and take when we are dealing with planned unit developments. In this particular case, the developer was proposing more brick and stone on the exterior of the building than would be required under our code. Enhanced exterior building materials. The siding, the vinyl siding was going to be switched out for higher quality material. And then the landscaping that is being proposed on the site exceeds our landscaping requirements. This slide is really just to show the challenges on the site. There is a very large wetland that is kind of oddly shaped, which makes the site very difficult to design. So on the right is the delineated wetland, or the official wetland boundary, and on the left you can see how they're just barely fitting in the building, the parking, and the access drives within the upland area. Again, these are the deviations from the city code. Again, I think we'll be able to cross the parking deviation off the list. Also, usually stormwater ponds are dedicated to the city in an outlot In this case, I think we will consider a variance to allow them to remain in a easement and owned by the developer. One of the items that was requested by both the Planning Commission and the City Council, because we don't have any multi-story buildings or no new ones for sure, and the area is currently very wide open and flat, were renderings. So they could get a visual feel or impact, see the visual impact of the proposed building coming in from the two county roads. Joseph Development has provided those renderings, which would give a scale. So this is County Highway 2 looking towards the west, towards the downtown. Just for reference, this is the old barn, the former Mahoney property, or the Newmarket Bank property. So you can see how close the building would be to the existing trail. You know, it's hard to see exactly, but hopefully this can give you some idea of the visual impact. Of course, off to the left, it's going to be a wide open wetland area, or off to the left of the picture, you'll start to hit that wetland. And then this is the rendering looking north. And so this would be north on County Road 91. And across, this would be the homes on Dorothy Lane, and the height of the homes. In your packet, there were also some cross sections that were provided. But this is kind of the difference in height between a two-story home and what the building may look like. The south side of the building here, you will see the entry into the garage because the property drops off on this side of the property here. That's where the garage is partially exposed. The city did ask Ellers to assist us in our review of both of the applications in 2021 and 2022. We asked them specifically to provide a comparison of the differences in the two projects. Their comparison was provided in a memorandum that was in your packet dated March 17th. They did update their TIF analysis. A lot of, obviously, construction costs have changed. Some tax laws have changed that impacted the TIF revenue. So overall, a summary of the changes between last year and this year can be kind of summarized as increased construction and development cost, a decrease in the total dollar amount of the TIF request, an increase in the term of the request from 21 years to 26 years, which is the maximum allowed under state statute. There is an increase overall funding gap for the project. There's a change in unit mixes. There's been an addition of some 4-bedroom units and a decrease in the 3-bedroom units and an increase in the 2-bedroom units.
Mayor, you might be talking about this later in the presentation, but the reason that the TIF request has gone down is just because of the amount of TIF that's available with the change in the state law related to tax. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll touch on it a little bit, and Rebecca can probably speak to it, and Rebecca and Matt can speak to it as well if there are further questions that I can answer. And then there was a change in proposed rents, lowered rents on some of the larger units, and the purpose for that was to increase the competitiveness in the housing tax credit application. So again, in the 2021 application for TIF, in the letter or the resolution that was adopted by the council, indicated the council would support TIF to an amount of $944,459 over a 21-year term. Ellers has concluded that in 2021 and again in 2022 that the project would not be financially feasible but for the business subsidy. The 2022 business subsidy application, again for tax increment financing, reduces that overall amount to $730,000 over the 26-year term. And the reason is a reduction in the total tax amount, which then causes a reduction in the TIF revenue amount. over the term. So they pushed up the term to the max, and it will only generate $730,000 in TIF revenue over the maximum term. Again, due to recent changes in the 4D property tax legislation that reduces the amount of annual tax and tax increment for these types of projects. And again, as I stated earlier, Ellers has identified that the project would not be financially feasible without TIF. Noted in your memorandum was that Ellers has identified and Joseph Development has indicated, in addition to the $730,000 funding gap, there's an additional funding gap of $1.3 million. And the developer is seeking funding from Scott County for the remaining gap not covered by the TIF revenue. And I have spoken with the CDA director, who has confirmed that they do have money available, mostly through ARPA dollars that they have chosen to designate to affordable housing projects, and that they have been in discussions with Joseph Development, are expecting their application, and have only 2 projects in the county that they are working on with 2 different pots of money. So it was positive feedback from the county regarding this particular item. This is the difference in the unit mixes between the 2 projects. So you can see the 1-bedrooms stay the same. There's slightly more 2-bedrooms, 10 less 3-bedrooms, and then the addition of 6 4-bedrooms, still for a total of 61 units. Both applications, or both projects, are affordable housing, targeted to those earning 60% or less of the area median income. A person or a family would need to meet income requirements to qualify for housing at this project. Shown in the slide here are the unit mixes. Certain units will be directed towards certain income limit, people with certain income limits. 27 units directed to those earning 50% of the area median income, 22 units to those at 60% of the area median income, 4 units at 30 for those are earning 30% of the area median income. So those would be considered deeply affordable. 8 units would also be reserved for those with 60% AMI rent limit, or would have rent limits of 50% AMI, and would be reserved for clients receiving supportive services from the county. So the average income targeted for the project this year is 56.07% of the area median income. I just included on the bottom some of the income limits for households of various sizes, which was also included in your packet. The 2022 rent limits were recently released by HUD for Scott County. And then, as you consider this project, I just wanted to remind the council of some of the housing goals that were identified in the 2040 comprehensive plan, specifically the housing chapter in the plan. There were 4 goals identified in the comprehensive plan related to housing, 2 of them of which related to affordable housing, provide housing options for people in all stages of life and all economic means, and provide opportunities for the city's share of affordable dwelling units. And that's the city share, meaning at a regional level across the metropolitan area. And then the plan also identifies tools that we can use to try to help achieve these goals. And specifically stated in our comprehensive plan are that the city will consider the use of TIF for development proposals creating multifamily housing options that are not currently available within the community and meet TIF requirements under state statute. The city will be aware of and promote programs offered through Minnesota Housing Finance Agency that may provide assistance for a variety of housing options. And then the third tool is that the city will consider TIF for multifamily development proposals creating dwelling units affordable to persons at 80% AMI or below, and meet TIF requirements under state statute. So those are some of the goals. Not that that is a mandate that you have to do any of them. Every situation should be considered on a case-by-case basis. Also, Tom and I recently had the opportunity to review the draft Scott County Housing Needs Analysis. This isn't a final release, but I don't anticipate that there will be changes in the housing needs that have been identified for the Elko New Market area from now through 2040. So the study shows that there's a demand for 288 rental units, not including seniors, in Elko New Market within that time period.
How many do we have?
Ballpark.
0?
Okay.
Well,
I mean, it was close to 0.
We have 3.
I mean, so that's right.
10,
Okay.
probably.
All right.
Single-family homes.
If you don't include single-family units, we have 3 units, the high-rise on 266th Street, so.
Mhm. Okay.
Of the 208 rental units that were identified for our community, there's a projected need for 101 shallow subsidy and 43 deep subsidy units.
And I would assume that we're at 0 for those, out of the 3.
Yeah.
Is that what my guess?
Yeah. Shallow subsidy housing is defined as income restricted to households earning at or below 80% of their median income, and then deep subsidy is at or below 30% of their median income. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, the council is being asked at this time to commit to preliminary support of the project based on the information provided. Being asked, any action being requested at this time does not constitute approval of the project. Land use approvals and/or TIF both require appropriate public hearings under Minnesota statute. Should the council support the project and the use of TIF to assist in reducing the financial gap, there are 3 actions that are recommended. One would be to motion to support, again, Concept Plan H, noting 34 conditions that were contained in your memorandum in your packet. The second motion, if you support, is to adopt resolution number 22-34 supporting TIF for the affordable housing project. And then finally, to approve a letter of support that could be included with their application to Minnesota Housing Finance Agency and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the council. So again, I'd like just to reiterate that we have representatives from Ellers here. Rebecca is with us. Matt with MWF is representing the developer. And Al is here with the representing the property ownership group.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of the changes in the project, the decision to go to the 4-bedroom units, and then also the with services as a new element? Can you explain to the council what that means and how
Sure.
that works within the project?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Mayor and council, thanks for the opportunity to bring the project to you guys again. Like Renee mentioned, the project wasn't awarded last year, but Minnesota Housing releases kind of where we were in the competitiveness, and we tried to identify some ways we could maybe go up a notch or two to be able to get within the range that was awarded last year. So we looked at a few things as part of that. The inclusion of the 4 bedrooms to serve some larger families. A little bit, like you said, the overall average income is the same place as it was last year, but we moved the units around a little bit to better hit the priorities that Minnesota Housing was looking for. We are increasing our ask to the Scott County CEA. We've been working with them kind of over the past year to let them know, give them a little bit more background on what more assistance dedicated to one project would do to try to get one project over the finish line than trying to kind of allocate it evenly between all. So That's an avenue we're looking at. We're developing more local partnerships. A group, Advocates for Thriving Communities, based out of Shakopee. And we're working with them to develop a partnership on some more pre-designed stuff, elements that can be implemented into our project. And that meets another Minnesota housing scoring priority to make the project a little more competitive. Again, nothing too substantial as far as site plan unit mix stuff, but just more in the detailed design feedback is what we're getting from them. And then as Tom mentioned, the supportive service unit. So we're partnering with CAP Agency, who's based out of Shakopee, to provide services to supportive services to clients that come from Scott County through the coordinated entry system. So they're vetted through that process, provided by Scott County to our development, and kind of go through our same screening process as a normal resident would. A lot of times there's going to be an appeal, so we work through the appeal process with them, but the same standard applies. We don't want any resident in the building that's going to harm the safety of other residents, employees, neighbors. So we go through that same screening process with those units as we do with the general occupancy units. Anyway, CAP Agency will be involved providing at a minimum 2 hours of service per unit per week. So 2 hours per unit every week. And that takes a couple of different shapes. It can be in the unit. It can be we have a dedicated service provider office in the project, so they can meet in that office if they prefer to get out of the unit. There's helps with transportation options for these clients. We have an agreement between ourselves, Valair, who's the property management company and has about 100 of these similar supportive service units, and CAP Agency. We will have an agreement with them specific to this project, outlining our expectations, outlining Valair's expectations, and making sure that CAP is comfortable meeting what we need from them to make sure that, as long-term owners of these projects, we're going to be here for a long time. We want to be good neighbors. We want to make sure we have relationships with city police departments, fire departments, whatever it might be. We actually have, before every project opens, we have a meeting between our property management company, ownership, and the police department so that we can establish those connections. Over time, kind of the nature of multifamily, but specifically because of some concerns we've come across with these supportive housing units from cities, we like to just establish that connection up front. Make sure that they have our contact info. If anything comes up, hopefully try to get ahead of a lot of stuff, but if anything comes up, kind of know what the policies are, who we should be reaching out to, and hopefully be able to address that stuff, those concerns as soon as they come up. So, yeah, I guess in sum, the supportive service item, the 4 bedrooms, the developing the partnership with another local entity, and then the increased contribution, or request, I should say, to Scott County CDA. We think and obviously the request that we have into you guys as well with the TIF extension here that's being discussed tonight. We think that with those revisions or changes to plan, we can get the project in a spot where it can be competitive for the Minnesota housing financing. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much a summary of any changes from last year as far as competitiveness and stuff.
All right. Do you have more questions, Tom?
If the council has, other council members have questions, I prefer to have two additional questions.
Bryce, Josh, Amanda?
Do you want to go for it?
On supportive services, what is the nature of the services that are provided?
So like I said, it can look a variety of different ways. We will have an individual dedicated to our project by CAP Agency that will be serving these clients. So they'll have an established relationship with our on-site management, who will hold regular office hours, and they'll have weekly meetings with CAP Agency as well. It really does look a lot of different ways. If there's certain services, community services that the resident needs, specific community service that the resident needs, the service provider at CAP will help connect them to those services, provide transportation and things. If it's grocery shopping, they'll pick them up and they'll go grocery shopping. If it's just,
talking about how things are going, helping them with the adjustment process to a new unit.
I mean, these, like I said, Valair Work has about 100 of these units that we own and that they manage. Cap Agency is, you know, if you ask Valair, they're top 2 strongest service providers we have. They're very well
into the day-to-day with these residents. We have them in Cap Agency in Shakopee, in Savage, and they're our preferred provider for projects in this area because of how consistent both the services are to the clients and also the communication with us, so that we can make sure any issues or any potential issues are being addressed.
So it sounds very similar to like a service coordinator type role that's in HUD properties, in my brain. So it doesn't sound like health-related services of any kind.
Yeah, they're not medical professionals or anything. It's a lot of times they have social work backgrounds.
Yeah, more of the household need, financial discussions, perhaps planning.
Yep.
Because otherwise, once it crosses over into the health-related stuff, then you get into home care and assisted living and all that stuff.
Can you talk a little bit more about the application process last year? Did you get, do you have more that you can share with us as to why the project wasn't selected?
Yeah, it's an extremely competitive process for these 9% tax credits. There was, you know, generally about a third of the projects get awarded, and it was lower than that last year. There were 3 projects awarded in the entire metro area. I think that's a combination of where construction costs are, where interest rates are going, and financing is getting a little tighter.
But it's also due to just kind of the agency's choice on how they want to allocate their resources, which changes year to year. So, you know, I would say, you know, we think the nice thing about this year is they released a range of the projects that were competitive and were awarded were within this range. So we kind of have that as a goal to get above the low end and as close to the high end as we can, to be able to be competitive. We're looking at applying for a couple other Minnesota housing resources as well, potentially, to see if there might be a way to get creative on the financing structure. If it's a project that they like, they've been willing to do that historically. So it's just a really competitive process. We think we've made some changes this year that can get us, you know, through our discussions with the CDA and through these other partnerships we've made, that can get us in the competitive range.
So nothing really like concrete necessarily, just kind of a variety of different things. And
Yeah.
the process is just, it's kind of tough to.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of just the whatever the goals are of Minnesota housing in that year kind of drive the day.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was more of the lower income supportive housing units. So a lot of the projects, the 3 projects that were awarded, included a higher percentage of those. So I'd say that's probably the one glaring kind of project difference between ours and from last year and what was awarded. But again, it's changes year to year.
Tom,
I just had my
you have a
second
question?
second follow-up question. When you were chatting about the nature of the project, you'd mentioned that part of that you have like meetings with city, et cetera. And in that statement, you'd said something about to talk about issues that, you know, and try and get ahead of issues you've had with other projects or communities have had with other projects. What type of issues were those?
Yeah, I think it's mostly demand on services stuff. It's kind of, you know, multifamily. You know, there tends to be the narrative out there that it comes with more police calls and things. So, but that, you know, our argument is if you put, you know, 50 households in a neighborhood, you'd have an increase in calls as well. And we think the ability to have a strong management team here actually helps abate that a little bit, because we can have that relationship. And I think it all kind of goes back to
what I originally said is, you know, it's not advantageous to us to have a problem property in a new community. And I think, you know, while there are issues at these properties, what I like to speak to is kind of the communities where we've had multiple projects. In Scott County, Shakopee, we had multiple projects within a few years. In Mankato, we're building our second project right now. Rochester, we have 12 deals, so there's areas of the metro and greater Minnesota where we have a project and we've gone back for a second one, and, while there's issues with, service, increases in service calls and things, that they see, the benefit outweighs the costs in their mind, because it's a strong management team, it's a long-term owner, that's gonna take care of their properties and address whatever it might be as quickly as we can.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Council?
I'll start out with, does anybody have strong concerns that they want to raise? Is there a particular area that you want to discuss, or is everyone just wanting to vote for it?
Where are people at? This is a great discussion so far.
I don't have any concerns.
So you're supportive of this project?
Yes.
I had no concerns of not, the concerns I have is not doing anything, and it has nothing to do with what Matt was just saying. It was more of, I go back to that 2040 comp plan slide, it seems like a project like this checks every one of those boxes in the goals section, it checks every one of the boxes in the tools section, and, correct me if I'm wrong, we reviewed that comp plan, we approved that comp plan, and so, it just seems like this fits, almost perfectly in all of that. And, just the fact that we have zero of anything in this community, again, screams we need to do something. And I think this is a great step. I was super happy to hear about CAP and Scott County getting involved, because I think that's more skin in the game, more local partners that are going to participate in this with us. So I'm fully supportive.
Bryce, you have any
Concerns?
thoughts? No, you're all,
Same opinion that I had last year when it was presented.
I don't remember what that opinion was, but.
Supportive.
You're supportive.
Supportive opinion, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any major concerns. I think you addressed the one that probably jumps out more than anything, which is, 26 years of TIF is a long period of time, and there is gonna be an increase in services, but I don't think there's much you can do, and honestly, in the grand scheme of things, 730,000 in TIF is not, it's not a huge ask, really, so that doesn't really bother me too much. I would, and this is more of a process thing, prefer to try and do this as with variances rather than PUD, for a number of reasons that aren't real relevant to this conversation, but I'm supportive of the project as well, so. Seeming that there's several things that need to be passed, Tom, would you just read them off and we can follow with a motion?
Yep, and I'm just gonna check with Leah, could they do all three actions as a single motion?
Yes.
So if the council is fully supportive of the project, you could pass a motion to, 1, review the concept plan, 2, adopt resolution 2234, and 3, approve a letter of support for Joseph Development.
So moved.
Motion by Josh.
Second.
Second by Bryce. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, authorized hire of public works employee.
So the city council is being asked to consider the authorization of an additional public works maintenance worker 1 position within the public works department. Council will recall that during last year's budgeting process for 2022, one of the goals that was originally identified was the hire of an additional public works maintenance worker. However, as we went through the budget process, in balancing out priorities relative to tax impact and the overall finances of the city council decided that that was not going to be possible within the 2022 budget, but at the time indicated strong support for it and directed that it be included in the projected budget as a planning item for the 2023 budget. One of the things that the council did authorize was a community development position, a planner 1 position. As we got into the year, as the council is aware, we have not hired that position for a variety of reasons. One of them, and primarily maybe the most significant one, is just simply the development outlook with everything that's happening within the development community right now. We want to make sure before we add a permanent position that the need is going to be there and that we don't hire a position, have the development market cool significantly and then not need the person or have a level of need that justified it in the first place. We don't want to lay somebody off, to put it simply. The other issue is that when we went out for the position, the pool was underwhelming. And so we had intended to just wait a little bit later to see if there's turnover in the pool and we might have a better luck later in the year. And the other reason was that with Jake coming on board as planner one at the beginning of the year, those two things allowed us opportunity for Jake to continue to develop professionally within the organization, and then he would be a better asset to help mentor the new planner later in the year.
How's that working out?
No pressure.
No pressure.
So far, so good. They weren't asking me.
So as we get later into the year, it becomes a function of math. We're at a point now where if we were to hire either or both of the positions, realistically, the individual probably would not be starting until early August. And if you look at the unspent budget dollars within the general fund and the utility funds, there is now sufficient funds to actually hire both positions for the remainder of the year effective August 1st. Given that the budget can accommodate it, we thought it was reasonable to bring back to the council a consideration to hire the public works position. We would still continue to monitor the situation relative to the need for that additional planner position. But that is dependent upon other factors. The public works need is a constant need, so to speak. It's a base level need, and so that is not going to be as variable as the community development position. One thing we should note, though, is if the council does authorize the hire, that expense will be baked into the 2023 budget. Because you're authorizing it now, it's a permanent position, so it'll just be automatically included within that budget. So with that, are there any questions for staff? Corey's here if you have any questions about the nature of the position.
I was gonna say, this must be important. If
I know.
Corey's
I know,
here.
Corey.
Finally comes up.
I drove to Oxford to watch the softball game, and they won, so we're good.
We're just happy to see you. Does anyone have any questions? I was a little reluctant last time, but I'm on board. Is everyone else on board? Amanda?
I'm just, so, are we going to have, in the future then, are we going to have the opportunity to approve the hire of the planner one? Is that like kind of kicked out of the budget for now?
Well, it's currently in the authorized budget, so unless you tell us otherwise, we would still consider that I would have authorization to hire that position if we get to a point where we think it's appropriate. We're not at that point, and it's possible we may not be at that point through the end of the year, depending on what happens over the next several months. If we get to discussions about the budget for the following year and we haven't hired that person yet, we can always have that discussion. We would probably recommend that it be included in the budget, and we would hire if we, need it. But we will have a clear idea of what the need is going to be as we get later in the year, based on a number of projects that are currently at a conceptual point or being recruited at the moment.
We just had a difficult budget discussion last year and really kicked a lot of things to the future, and so I'm just wondering if we're going to be in a pickle by authorizing this position and not considering all the other stuff that we've pushed for this following year as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I had shared that concern at the last meeting as well.
For just my opinion, we've always been pretty good at being flexible with moving things around and accommodating things that are considered a need.
Corey doesn't ask for something unless he needs something.
Just given the history of staff's ability to kind of work within the budget and move things around, and our ability as a council, every budget discussion is always tough because we're always cutting things that we want to do. But that shouldn't sideline us from making decisions. It's my 2 cents. That's why I turned from kind of being somewhat against it to being for it.
But you are correct, Amanda, it would remove some of that flexibility, but, I mean, not to trivialize it, but every year we start with this, and somehow we always manage to get down to that.
We'll carry on with our creativity. I'm fine with the fire.
All right. You need a motion?
Yep, so I would simply need a motion to authorize the city administrator to hire an additional public works maintenance worker, one position.
So moved.
Motion by Bryce.
I'll second.
Motion by Bryce, second by myself. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, Amanda?
I said aye.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, council compensation.
So this was an item that the council had previously discussed. They had directed staff to go out, research what the pay is out there. We used 2 market groups. One we used Scott County, and then we also used the same market group that we use for employee compensation, and there is some overlap between the two. What we found is that the current council compensation is a little bit below the average of those market groups. The council had directed us to prepare for consideration an ordinance that would adjust mayor compensation from $400 a month to $500 a month, and council member from $300 to $400, which is still slightly below those averages, but closer to the average. And to bring it back for council, which we have done, the council should note that if they do approve the ordinance, it would not go into effect until next year.
I know we've discussed this before. Was there any other discussion to be had? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to, oh gosh, what am I motioning?
To adopt ordinance 247.
I'll motion to adopt ordinance 247.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
I knew that was coming. Motion still passes. I laugh because the last time we had this discussion, I was like the one nay in the group. Okay.
I think we're considering whether we need to choose a majority or not.
Since Kate's not here.
I'm just double checking that it doesn't require a supermajority.
Or did we have to finalize the? That's why I asked where Kate was, because if she's abstaining versus if she had some other reason.
No, she's simply absent.
Okay. Give me a second.
So continue on with the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and if for whatever reason we need to have full council for this, we'll just do that.
Okay.
Let us know, so.
That's good.
All right, we have one more item, disorderly houses.
So our ordinance currently, our city code currently includes a section on disorderly houses. Put in a very simple sense, it allows the city to issue a citation to the owner of a property if we are required to respond to calls at the property at a certain level over time. Basically, it's a tool to put pressure on the property owner to manage their tenants so that they don't put undue burden on the resources of the city. Is that a fair statement, Chief?
Very fair.
It already exists within the city code, but knowing that we're having increased interest related to multifamily projects, which are more likely to generate a need for this use of this particular section of the ordinance, we had the city attorney review it just to make sure that it's meeting current standards from a statutory standpoint, case law standpoint, and it's as enforceable as it can be. And so what we're asking the council to do is to basically adopt an ordinance that would amend it to make some tweaks to it to make sure that it's as tight as it can be.
So I had requested to get pulled and moved to general business, and it's not that I'm not supportive of it. It just got a little murky as I'm reading through the I don't know, disorderly houses, I guess, section A, then all the itemized, stuff on here, I guess. Possession or use of gambling devices or the conduct of any gambling in violation of Minnesota law. I mean, are we talking like someone has poker parties at their house, or, I mean,
It's not just a house, as in residential, it's a business, so it can be used against a business that's generating a lot of calls. Oftentimes called house of ill repute, if you have a home where you feel prostitution is going on or causing issues. It really works for just about any place in town that's generating a lot of calls due to nuisances, if that makes sense. So it could be a rental property, it could be a bar, it could be massage parlor, it could be a fitness club, any place that gambling, loud music, raucous behavior could be taking place.
I think the mayor's just concerned that you're gonna kick his door down during poker night.
a little bit.
If you had poker every night and we got a lot of calls there, we would never kick your door down, we'd just give you a ticket.
So is that, so giving a ticket to the property owner, so this isn't this is any property owner or any property, whether it's a rental or non-rental.
Yeah, if you own your own home, that's where we can charge you with it.
Right.
But if you have a renter and that renter just doesn't care and keeps getting ticketed, we're gonna start holding the homeowner, the landlord, responsible for the activity in the home.
And that's really the big change from where we are now to what you're looking at adopting, correct?
No, it's always that way. It was legal ease, if you will, to make it more prosecutable, I think is what the language was reviewed. It's a attorney talk, but the concept was always the same, is to hold the owner of the property that's causing the problem responsible, not just the renter. Because what we're finding is you can charge the renter a lot of times and the landlord isn't doing anything about it because they don't care.
I guess what I'm asking is what is being changed really just adding that extra level of being able to bring in the property owner on a rental property for a citation?
No, that was an element of the ordinance originally.
That was an element of the
Yes.
ordinance.
That was the reason for the ordinances, was to hold the owner of the property that's renting to somebody responsible. So say Captain Black's, the building is owned by one person, but the bar's another.
Yep.
We could charge the building owner with it.
Today, before
Yes.
passing this ordinance.
Yes.
So everything
But this
that's
is making it
under
now
allowance.
more, we had it reviewed to modern day, I guess,
that's what's added.
standards.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that. Like I said, I wasn't necessarily opposed, I just wanted to
Well,
understand
I
a little
vote,
bit
I
better.
didn't read the consent agenda, so I'll be honest. So, I mean, I'm trying to catch up on the fly. You know, how does this compare with other communities locally?
It is very proactive. Many communities don't take the step. We had this in Chaska and it was put in place just for this reason, because we had many landlords that were letting their properties go to garbage and they were generating tons of calls of police service and fire service. And what we found was being able to charge the actual owner, all of a sudden they got something in the mail and they're like, what? Something's going on at this house, you know, and now I'm responsible, the renter's gone. And they evicted the problem renter, and which eased services to that residence.
So I don't know what, yeah, this crossed my mind previously, but, you know, obviously, the city doesn't look at rental agreements. And my concern would be a property owner that is now being cited for something that's happening on their property, and because of the way their lease is worded, there's nothing they can really do about it. Are we
That's a
putting,
risk of business.
are we putting them in a difficult
Right.
position?
Well, when the lease came up, my feeling is they would go, not having that again, you're not leasing from me anymore. Now I'm gonna make a better lease where I can evict you.
Most leases have provisions in them that talk about any criminal activity that occurs on the property, or if it continues to occur on the property, that the property owner has the right to give notice to that.
I suppose you're right, that's part of doing business. My fear is putting, landlord in a difficult spot.
I think they would prefer to, and being a landlord myself, I think you prefer to know if you're
Yeah.
having problems at your property versus not having any notice and everything going to the tenant and nothing getting changed.
Yeah, but if you
That
got
could be-
cited for something though as a property owner.
Well,
You couldn't do anything about it.
I'm pretty sure that the police department would probably have some conversations
Yeah.
with that homeowner at that point to say, look, we've been to your house X number of times.
Mhm.
It's becoming a problem. If the problem isn't taken care of, here's what we have for remedies
Yeah.
and what we can do if you're not gonna address it yourself.
And that's kind of what I would expect of our police department as
Yeah.
well.
Bryce said it perfectly, you brought up, we have little to no rental housing in town,
Yeah,
multifamily housing. As we develop it, we will develop a position within the police department that will be a multi-housing unit officer. And it's not gonna be just the officer's only job, it'll be me, when it starts right away, right, because it's an administrative job. We will take our calls and send those reports to the property management, and that's what Mike, or Mark, what was
Matt?
Matt's, I knew it was an M. That's what Matt was referring to, that relationship.
yep.
And if a rental house, we had a rental house, we would ask Renee to please pull who owns the house. We would send them a letter stating we responded 2 times in the last week to this house for loud music. Any more calls after this, you are potentially gonna be charged under this ordinance. So we would continue our proactive nature, stop it before it happens, education-based, not,
Something
punitive-based.
we might want to consider as a city and looking into is the possibility of some type of, something that we put together that requires landlords to have their tenants sign crime-free, drug-free housing addendums to their leases that just states, as a city, here's our position on, multifamily housing and our stance on crime and drugs. And a lot of cities adopt that and require it. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's a rental registration or a licensing or anything like that. It just says, here's something that we would like to see our property owners have signed as a part of their leases to lease in town.
Yeah, it's a decent thing to have a discussion about at some point in the future, so.
Yeah, and my concerns go straight to kind of what you were going towards too, because I've seen some really crappy city councils in other cities really take strong actions, West St. Paul, South St. Paul, where they go after landlords, and it's more of that licensing piece where the city licenses the landlords, and then they revoke their licenses, and they don't work themselves with the landlords. I'm more worried about the city council, the city staff, being too aggressive in the future, when
Yep.
we're not here, logical people, sitting in these seats, making it hard to do business, to rent properties and that kind of thing, so.
I think holding landlords responsible in general is a really good thing though. Property maintenance, property upkeep. And it really goes to what the council has stated, quality of life issues. You have to think of the other tenants in that building that put up with the music, put up with the screaming, put up with the loud drug behavior, whatever going on. You're really protecting them with this ordinance as well.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not opposed to the ordinance and what it's trying to do. I just wanted to make sure we weren't falling in any traps. Any other discussion or comments or motions?
And I will state, with any ordinance, it can be scratched at any time by any council.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 248.
Motion by Bryce,
Second.
second by Amanda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. All right, on to reports.
If I could just chime in real quick, there is no supermajority requirement for the salary for the mayor.
I just wanted to double check.
No, I appreciate that, yeah.
Um,
Administration.
The item we have tonight is a discussion and direction from council related to building permit or community development and public works or asset management software. Both have been items that we've discussed with the council in the past. The building permit software was an item that the council directed staff to look into for use of ARPA dollars. We have talked about asset management software for public works. At one point, it was one of the 5 priority goals for the city. Movement on that has been primarily limited based on staff bandwidth to research it, and became an opportunity to take a look at as part of the community development software. Jake will go into the detail on it, but what we're looking for from the council tonight is basically a direction from you guys whether or not you want to pursue one or both of them moving forward. Under Jake.
Mayor Council, like Tom said, we'll be getting into building permit public works software here tonight. When we look at the timeline back in 2019, as Tom mentioned, we initially began researching this with the city of Lonsdale. The project was put on hold due to other priorities, limitation of staff resources, as well as there wasn't really a clearly identified funding source. Then we fast forward to 2021 with the introduction of the ARPA funding. A funding source was identified that would allow us to purchase this software. And early on in 2022, with the additional staff hires, it allowed more opportunities to continue the research, leading us here till tonight. Oh my gosh, to tonight. There we go. Staff was able to research and attend demonstrations offered by 5 different companies listed up here: iWork, Logis, PermitTrax, OneGov, and GoGov. The evaluation factors staff used included pricing, customer service, ease of use, not just for city staff, but also for residents and customers using the software, as well as other capabilities offered by the software, and payment methods, and feedback from users when possible. And we narrowed our top 3 companies down to iWork, OneGov, and GoGov. OneGov did have variable pricing depending on the number of permits processed in a year, which really would prevent staff from accurately budgeting for it on a year-to-year basis. GoGov was affordable. However, the software was so new that staff had worries about potential issues that could arise. And following the research period, staff narrowed their selection down to iWork. iWork was chosen as a finalist because of its 20-year track record. Our building official has familiarity with the product since it is also being utilized by the city of Lonsdale. And they offer modules for public works, which the city has also had an interest in exploring. We'll get into the community development features first. Permit management. It's a feature that will track contractors, inspections, and property information. It's updated using county data, so it's a pretty complete database. Code enforcement module tracks code violations, fees, and other related activities regarding code enforcement, making mine and Renee's job a little easier, especially as we're moving towards the citywide sweep. And then Portal Home, which allows contractors and citizens to submit forms, manage applications, review permit status, request inspections, upload documents and images, and make payments, all from their mobile phone, tablet, or computer. So in addition to these 3 key features, iWorks is offering community development staff access to plan review management and Bluebeam integration. Staff has recently purchased 2 seats of Bluebeam, and we're going to use that for our project reviews here going forward. So we get into the why. First off, we have accessibility. It helps staff and customers track and manage permits from any mobile device. This means that residents no longer have to make multiple trips to City Hall. Customers can even apply for permits after business hours and on holidays or weekends. Of course, it's more eco-friendly than doing everything on paper. Payments are processed through a third party, PayRock, which means that applicants will have to pay the service fee directly meaning the city will no longer have to absorb those costs. It'll lead to increased efficiency. The plan review allows staff to collaborate together regardless of where they may be. And then I got a kind of a specific example in here. Last year, of course, the city of Lonsdale experienced a pretty bad storm. They received hundreds of re-roof, re-siding permits all within a period of a couple of days. They had iWork implemented at the time, and just hearing from the staff over there, it really saved them. Otherwise, they would have been pretty overwhelmed with all the applications coming in. We'll get into the public works side of things. The first module I'll talk about is their fleet management. It allows public works to track work orders, fuel usage, inventory management, purchase orders, managing maintenance schedules, as well as compiling this information into reports that can be used for other things or sent out to other people. Facilities management, similar to fleet management, except it allows for the tracking of assets such as HVAC, plumbing, electrical, lift station pumps, much more. Pretty much anything you can think of would be able to be recorded in that feature there. And then the public works package, it focuses on infrastructure, tracks labor, inventory, parts, material, manholes, hydrants, valves, lines, pavement conditions, distress, treatments, and pumps. Again, pretty much everything we can throw at it. And get into the reasoning why the public works software would benefit staff and the city as a whole. Number one is organization. iWorks public works software will help increase staff organization by storing information in the same place that can be viewed on any mobile device. Second, we got documentation. It'll help better document equipment, vehicles, facilities, which will allow staff to make more informed decisions on where time and resources are needed most. Reports generated through iWork can be sent to other departments to assist in any long-term planning needs, especially around budget time. Problem solving will help accomplish the city goal of problem solving by using this technology. It'll help improve the quality and accuracy of data used in the decision-making process as a whole. Then we got performance management. Public works software will help the city develop and utilize methods for measuring performance to evaluate progress and establish accountability for improving public services. Get into the actual proposal itself here. And if you guys have questions, feel free to ask as we go along. Training and implementation are provided by iWork. The implementation period is typically 60 days, depending on how well things go. We will be assigned a senior account manager to help that transition go smoothly. After talking to the city of Lonsdale, they said, the first person they had was kind of newer, and that it wasn't going so well at first. They worked with iWorks. iWorks provided the senior manager, and it was smooth sailing after that. So.
You know that they told us that's who they're going to get 6
Right. So that's customer support. They'll call staff twice per week, provide remote training once per week, as well as send weekly summary emails to the implementation team. Customer support and training are offered for free and during the city's business hours all week. We wouldn't be left in the dark. And lastly, we have discounts. They're offering the city discounted pricing by bundling the community development and public works software together. Additional discounts are provided if the city chooses to pay the fees up front and is willing to commit to a 3-year term. So now we'll get into the pricing side of things. As you can see in the far right here, that's the one staff is proposing here tonight. It's the biggest discount. We got 6 different proposals for them. The first, community development, just for 1 year. Comes to a total price of $11,700. We do have the implementation cost of $4,700 there. After that first year, it would be $7,000 just for that subscription fee for every additional year we chose to go ahead. Public Works is a little more expensive. Implementation costs there as well, just doing the 1 year solo. Total cost for year 1 would be $20,000. After that, it would be $12,000 yearly. Combined, that's when we see our first discount on the implementation cost. You can see is drastically cut down. Total cost for combining those just for 1 year would be $22,000, $17,000 every year after that. And I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, the biggest discounts are the combined package deal, and then along going with the 3-year term paid up front, and we'll see the biggest discount. If council does decide to go for the 3-year option, the soonest we would see an impact to the budget would be 2025. And we'll get into questions here.
Anyone have any questions?
What kind of technology do the public works staff have now? This might be a Corey question. Like, do they all have phones or do they?
No, we have notebooks.
So then would there
Notebooks or Excel
be
spreadsheets.
additional costs if we're gonna get them like tablets or phones or
No,
things for the
everybody, they all
beginning?
have smartphones for our SCADA system. So they all have phones already, but they can work on all.
They have work
Yep,
phones, is what you're
yep,
saying. Okay,
yep.
that's what okay.
But most of our stuff is tracked in notebooks or calendars or.
Spreadsheets, or here, or there, or there.
Honestly, that's kind of how it is.
Have you had any experience with this?
Not this
software?
one, I've had experience with other ones, and this one looks really nice. And the cost was actually really good too, and I've been screaming for this for 10 years, so. I've
I'm
been
not
very
opposed.
patient.
I was just curious if there
Yep.
was like additional cost if they didn't have.
Sounds like no, the setup time and collecting a lot of the data is gonna take a long time.
You're right.
Why do you hate Corey?
Well, I think it's because he keeps hiring people I know, so.
I hire good people then, right?
Yeah, well, maybe. I didn't choose my brother-in-law.
That's debatable.
So with regards to the public works,
I was just gonna say, does anybody have any objections or anything else?
No, I think the efficiency is going in the right direction.
I think you have a
So
support.
maybe I should have started with that.
So I think we're good.
so the next step is we have to work out the final terms of the agreement, and it will show up on a future consent agenda unless you guys want it to be up to process.
Sounds fine. We'll pull it if we want to.
Yep, and you guys track what Jake was saying with it being a 3-year contract, either in whole or part would not show up until 2025, depending on the cycle for the billing because of the 3 years. But we have to recognize in our projected budgets that it's gonna start.
Do we know what, I mean, obviously this company could increase their subscription fees in 3 years or whatever, but do we have any idea of what potentially it might be for future budget?
Yeah, it's right here in their proposal. Let me see, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it won't increase, I want to say more than 5% in any contract period.
Okay,
I
so
have
they
that
have
in
it
there.
capped.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 5%, but it was pretty low.
That's good to know.
And then, so for our next contract period, we won't go more than 5%, but when we talked with them, one of their sells when we talked with them a year back, is that once you come in, they don't typically raise your price ever. That's not, but we can't count on that. They get bought out by a larger conglomerate, so we make sure we have the protections. But generally speaking, as they say, they stay pretty consistent with price once you come on board. They're able to control their costs on the back end, and they're able to do that for their customers. It's how they're able to retain them. Unless, of course, your size of your operation changes significantly. So if we go from 5,000 to 25,000, they're probably gonna be coming back and saying, okay, the system you have, your usage on the system, et cetera, is at a volume where we need to change the term, we're gonna have to update the contract. But we told, they're like, where are you guys gonna be in like 5 years or 10 years? And we're giving the numbers, they're like, you would likely not see much contract. So we can only base on history, which shows that they don't get you in the door and jack it up. The other thing that we asked about is portability of information. It's fairly simple data fields. If it turns out that we need to switch, we own the data. They contractually have to provide it to us, and then we can take that data and go to somebody else's, we can migrate it to somebody else's system if we need to in the future. But this just really provides a cost-effective, decently robust system that will bridge the gap until we need something that's a little more sophisticated down the road in 5, 10, 15 years.
Actually, it's right here, the very last thing in the attachment for the proposal. This fee is locked in for the duration of your time with iWork Systems. So they're telling us it won't change. I think originally it was not more than 5%, and then when Tom and staff were discussing it with them, I think we kept bringing that up, and then they decided to add that to the contract. So
It was we've never done this, so then you can't come with the contract. So it sounds like they did, so.
Perfect.
All right, nice work.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so the 3-year combined.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Corey, since you're here, do you have anything for Public Works?
Yeah, we added about 600 ton of gravel to Woodcrest, Main Street, and gravel roads. So, did that all today.
They also took care of the restoration for us on the last force main project. We deliberately kept that out of the contract because it's such a nuisance. Quantities always go over, no one's ever happy. We turn it over to Corey, I don't get a phone call.
We're gonna hear the complaints anyway, so we just figure we'll do it. Saves money anyways.
So,
No, we're just plugging away.
Thanks. It's a rare opportunity to see us.
Always fun.
I guess, Tom, I moved on. Did you have anything else for administration?
I did not, Mr. Mayor, unless there's any questions for me.
Please?
We opened up to replace Officer Moser, and we received a total of 5 applications. To compare that, when we hired Officer Moser, we had 30, and of which 26 were viable applications. Of the 5, 4 were viable. 1 was not eligible to be a police officer. Just dismal, kind of very alarming numbers. Checked with one of my adjunct professor classmates at Normandale, and he said that enrollment's still down well over 50% for law enforcement classes. So we in the years coming up, we're not seeing an increase in that, so we think we're gonna be stuck with some dismal numbers for a while until something happens and changes. Legislature has not come up with any solutions at all. They haven't passed any incentives, any tax incentives, credits, any education incentives yet. We're hoping they do by the time they're done to help get people into law enforcement. But just this generation hasn't been getting any new officers. So coming up next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we're interviewing 4 candidates for the first stage. Then the week after that, I don't have my calendar in front of me. Following Wednesday, we're gonna need a city council member to be on our second interview panel. That is contingent, is if we have anyone we want to put through the second stage. We would need somebody then. Do we want to try to identify somebody, or?
It would be helpful if we have somebody's available on the 8th. We're not sure how many candidates, so we're not sure about the time commitment. The most it would be, given the number of candidates, is half a day.
I'm available.
And we're thinking morning, like 10, 11, right in there, 11 noon, something, so it shouldn't be super early.
I'm available to, if you want it. Or does anybody really want to be part of this?
I would love to do it, but I can't, so I'm helpful.
Wow. Bryce? No?
I was in the last one, I love doing these,
Yeah,
but I'll
they're fun.
give somebody else
Yeah,
a
I
turn.
can too. Well, how about, since we're kind of up in the air, just know both me and Amanda,
Okay.
could be, make ourselves available.
We'll let you know ASAP as soon as we know and how many, if we're gonna be going on. And then as soon as that's done, and if we do get a candidate, they will be immediately given a background packet. Usually we allow a week to finish that, and then Sergeant Bell will start right away in a background. That is a solid month and a half process. If background is complete, then we'll go to psychological, medical testing, and try to establish a start date. We're hoping for early August, but could be anywhere from early August to early September. We are short-staffed until then, We expect to see with vacations an increased gaps in coverage. Bear with us, we're doing everything we can to fill those with the other officers. I'm very sensitive to overtaxing our officers and making them work a ton. You know, as you can understand, it's already a profession that has its stressors, and just piling on or forcing overtime isn't something I want to do, or cancel vacations. So we're just trying to make that balancing act. If we do not identify anybody in this pool, we have a contingency plan to go to an open until filled model, where we were literally take an application, once it comes in, we'll be interviewing them just immediately or within the next day or two to try to find that candidate until filled. So we do have contingency plans, but it's pretty bleak out there. Departments 3-4 times their size are also getting 5-6 applications for multiple officer positions for growth or for retirements. So just bear that in mind as we're moving through here. So
Well, we only need one.
we only need one. We're actually pretty excited about some of them, so we're really hoping it works. But New Prague also just closed and they got 5, and we're wondering if they're the same 5. And I don't mean to sound funny, but what's happening is by the time you get somebody identified and you like them, they're also in another process that might have a $5,000 hiring bonus, or it might start at a higher pay. So just, you know, it's a struggle for us. And Corey knows as well, trying to hire public works, everybody's facing this. It's on top of all the other challenges, though, we have media perceptions that we're also fighting, and the desirable factor of our position right now is down in some communities. So not trying to be bleak, but just more realistic. Also, too, we have identified, and a party has confessed to our bank robbery that happened. And more to follow, but that's just brand new information. We're still seeing if everything we have, it's prosecutable, but we're gonna be working with Scott County Attorney's Office to see if we can bring up charges on it. But party has been identified and preliminarily confessed. So we're gonna be working with the County Attorney's Office. Sergeant Bell's investigating further, try to get more information to make that charge stick. But this party did multiple bank robberies. It's been in the news, Burnsville, Bloomington, and other cities. So Sergeant Bell is pretty proud. He's batting 100% for felonies and arrests being made. So although, you know, there has been some felonies, everyone's in jail. So that's good. Any questions for me about any of that? Thank you. Sorry to take up so much time.
Very good. Anything on fire that should be?
You guys had it on the agenda tonight.
Engineering?
Nothing.
Nothing. Community development?
Just advise the council that there's a planning commission meeting on Tuesday night. We have a concept plan review of a 118-unit apartment building. Well, really, the real question is if the planning commission is in support of re-guiding a parcel just north of the strip mall on the west end of town, on the north side of Old Town Road, to allow for multifamily. I won't be at the meeting. Tom and Jake will be covering the item for me, but the pack just went out. If anybody's interested in taking a look at that. And then we did meet with a developer for about 33 acres north of City Hall here, and he is asked to be placed on a planning commission agenda for a concept plan review in June. So as possible, yes, asked him to work out, just have a conversation with his neighbor about some land swaps that need to take place. But any questions?
Anything from Parks to
Pass on?
No, we didn't have a Parks meeting this month. Our next meeting will be on the 8th of June.
Okay. CCEC, there was a report.
Yeah, I don't have anything other than what's in the packet.
Okay.
I can give you a quick update on parks. There's a new climber going in at Wagner. I think in the next 2 weeks, it's a massive thing that's going up in the one corner that they ordered last year that they've been waiting for it to get installed. So that's going in probably within 2 weeks.
The hover net?
Yep, that's the hover net, and then there's a couple other pieces that they're waiting for right now that we will install once they get them. So another seesaw and tilt-a-whirl type thing.
Cool.
And then there's more skate park equipment coming that was ordered last year, I think end of the month, next month. So a lot of stuff going on in parks.
Can we please get video of the Public Works guys, like testing them out afterwards?
We don't test them.
Like, we would love to see some video of you guys doing that. It would be,
I think the city council maybe should.
that's fine,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm on board. All right, other committee reports. I did not make the scale meeting, unfortunately. Was anyone able to make it? All right. Scale exec is next week. Anything for service delivery?
Not of note.
I-35.
Nothing to report.
Any discussion by council?
Just two quick ones. Shame on our legislature for not passing crap this last session, our House representatives specifically. But anyway, just a shout out to my daughter Stella, who just finished 5th grade today. She was one of the few that received the President's Education Award for Outstanding Academic Excellence. So just wanted to do a shout out to her.
Awesome. Any other discussion by council?
I hope she watches it on YouTube.
She doesn't watch it at all.
Otherwise, any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Josh,
Second.
second by Bryce, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.